Okay, can you please confirm, friends that we're on Facebook? Would you mind letting me know that we are indeed on Facebook? If you could just let me know that we are indeed on Facebook, that'll be very helpful. Anybody tell me if we are indeed on Facebook so we can get started. Just waiting for the signal. We're going to be learning about Mashiach today. It's actually lesson 4 in our series called the All About Mashiach. Days Are Coming is the name of the series. And we're learning about the role of Elijah the prophet. I see we are live on Facebook and we are ready to roll. Okay, back to Zoom and to our friends on Facebook. Thank you for joining us here today. You see Corey and Marty are with us on Facebook, Terry and Corey and Harvey and Sandy and Marty. And on YouTube, on Zoom, we have our other friends as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining me here today. We learned last week about Elijah the prophet. You know, there's a lot of talk about Mashiach. The world is ready more than ever before for change. The world is ready for something big to happen. And you can hear me on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the world is ready for something big to happen. And if everybody could, hold on. And we are learning all about Mashiach, therefore. We're learning all about Mashiach. Elijah the prophet plays a major role in the coming of Mashiach. And the question is why? Why do we speak about Elijah in such a major role about the coming of Mashiach? Like, who cares about his role in the coming of Mashiach? Why do we need him at all? What's the big deal? We've been learning a lot about Elijah in our Monday morning classes when we're learning the books of the prophets. And in those books of the prophets, we're learning about the story of Elijah, which is great. So we learned about this guy. Who is he? We know. But why is this man who lived thousands of years ago so important for the coming of Mashiach? Today, in this lesson, we're going to be learning about two things. We're going to be answering two questions. Number one, why we need him. But before we answer why we need him, we're going to be learning about what his other roles are. So that's what we're going to be learning in today's class, the other roles of Mashiach and why we need him all together. Why does Mashiach need a tag team? Why does he need a group to announce his arrival? Why can't he just do this all on his own? What's the point of here? So in order to begin this conversation, I'd like to first introduce what is the role of Elijah the prophet. Mashiach has a role which is to bring the world to redemption. But where does Elijah fit into this picture? He actually has more than just a role of announcing the redemption. His role is much more interesting than just that. So let's take a look at his role. What I'm going to introduce to you right now is a Mishnah from Tractate Eduyot. It's right here on the screen. And this Mishnah is going to teach us that his role is actually about clarifying the lineage of the people of Israel. His role is actually to prepare the Jewish people to clarify who's a Jew, who's not a Jew, who is a Kohen, who's a Levi, who's an Israelite, which tribe you're from, so that when we do this, once he's done, we'll be able to know who's, how to deal with everybody when it comes to the redemption, to the Mashiach, to the rebuilding of our temple, and what kind of service needs to be performed by what kind of people. We obviously got a little confused through 2,000 years of exile, and that's his role. So let's take a look at this Mishnah here on the screen. Rabbi Joshua said, I have received the tradition from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who heard it from his teacher, and his teacher heard it from his teacher as a halacha given to Moses in Mount Sinai, that Elijah will not come to pronounce unclean or to pronounce clean, to put away or to bring near, but to put away those brought near by force, and to bring near those who were put away by force. So that's the role of Mashiach. The family of Beit Srifa was on the other side of the Jordan, and Ben Sion put it away by force. And yet another family was there, and Ben Sion brought it near by force. So certain families were forced into the Jewish people, and certain families were forced out of the Jewish people. And that's the role of Mashiach. It is in cases such as these that Elijah will come to pronounce unclean or to pronounce clean, to put away or to bring near. Rabbi Judah says to bring near but not to put away. So Rabbi Judah gets more specific. He says that the role of Elijah is not only to bring close those that were chased away from the Jewish people and to bring to chase away those that were forced into the Jewish people, through improper conversions and those kind of things. But Rabbi Judah says he only emphasizes the positive. He doesn't do any of the negative. And Corey, to answer your question, we're talking about Mashiach right now. Sorry, not about Mashiach. We're talking about Elijah. I'm sorry. The role of Elijah, I'm sorry if I maybe misspoke moments ago. The role of Elijah is to clarify the status of all the Jewish people before the coming of Mashiach. Rabbi Judah specifies that it's only in the positive and not for the negative. Yet another opinion, Rabbi Shimon says, to conciliate disputes, and the sages say, neither to put away nor to bring near, but to make peace in the world. For it is said, behold, I send to you Elijah the prophet, and he shall turn the hearts of fathers to the children, and the hearts of children to their fathers. Right? From this passage, we can understand that the role of Mashiach, of Eliyahu, the role of Elijah the prophet is far more than just being a harbinger, making an announcement. His role is subject to this Talmudic debate, multiple things, specifically in the area of family lineage and pedigree. Right? Maimonides actually takes this a little bit further. Commenting on this Mishnah, Maimonides, who's a codifier, he actually rules as follows. The sages say that there are no injustices with regards to lineage. Rather, everyone's assumed lineage will ultimately be traced to the truth. For the Torah is the parent of all truth. What this means is that Elijah's role will not be to chase people away, those people that were forced into the Jewish people, or to tell someone who thought that he was a Kohen that is not really a Kohen. Because according to Torah, there's a concept called status quo. It's called chazakah, status quo, chazakah. And the Torah confirms that status quo counts for verification, for authenticity. So Elijah's role is not to break the status quo, is not to violate the chazakah. Rather, Maimonides rules the injustices Elijah will indeed arbitrate will be wrongdoings between one person and another. In other words, his role will be to bring peace. For they are petty, causing one to destroy another with their hatred. Elijah will come to remove this hatred and to restore peace. That's the role of Eliyahu. Maimonides here really clarifies that the role of Elijah is not to clarify lineage of the Jewish people. His role is only to bring peace to this world. It's interesting when you look at the Hebrew words on the screen right now. If you go to the third last line on the screen, it says, V'hu chomes b'sin ato. The word chomes or Hamas, the word Hamas actually means hatred. Now, it's interesting when we learn about Hamas in modern day politics today. Hamas is a militant terrorist group, which I believe is an Arab word, but it's interesting that in Hebrew, the word Hamas actually means hatred. Very interesting. But in any event, what we can see from this moment, is that the role of Eliyahu is not necessarily to reestablish Jewish identity or to cancel out Jewish identity or to cancel out Kohen or Levi status. Apparently, we don't really need that. And perhaps Maimonides, just this is my suggestion, maybe what Maimonides is talking about over here is that when he says that everyone's assumed lineage will ultimately be traced to the truth, could it be that Maimonides over here is talking about DNA? Could it be that Maimonides, 850 years ago when he wrote this, was saying that everyone's assumed lineage will ultimately be traced to the truth, that we won't need Elijah? Maybe he prophetically foresaw that there would be something out there in the future that might be able to ascertain Jewish identity. Today, we know DNA can even tell you if you're a Kohen or not. If you have the Kohen gene, the Levi gene, and we might be able to even whittle it down to tell you if you're from the tribe of Zavulun, Yisachar, Menashe, or Gad. Right? So could it be that Maimonides was onto something which he himself couldn't tell us because the world had no idea what it was until 840 years later? Maybe. Just a suggestion, but clearly in hindsight, it certainly comes into sharp focus as we realize that Maimonides was certainly onto something here when he said that we won't need we won't need Eliyahu to clarify Jewish identity. What we will need him for is to tell us, to help us resolve disputes and hatred. You know that there are some of these feuds that last the generations. There are fights between Jewish people that have been going on for 300 years, friends. I'm sorry to tell you this. You know, like you look at the Arabs, you know, you got the Sunnis and the Shiites. These guys have been fighting for 1,500 years, right? It just keeps on going. It's a perpetuated feud. You know, you got the same thing, unfortunately, is going on amongst the Jewish people. There are feuds that go on for hundreds of years. Nobody even remembers what they're fighting about, but they're fighting. We know that's the show I don't go to, right? Like the Jewish Robinson Crusoe. And when you realize that, the role of Eliyahu then is to bring peace, shalom to the world. Another role of Eliyahu is very interesting, and why we would need him, not only as a harbinger, as one announcing the redemption, but another reason why we would need Eliyahu is because his role apparently is to resurrect the dead. Take a look at this. Now, when you realize that his role is to resurrect the dead, you're like, okay. If we need him to resurrect the dead, then okay, then we understand why we need him. Let's take a look. This quote on the screen right now is not actually from Maimonides. It's a mistake on the screen. When it says that the quote is from Maimonides, it's actually from the Jerusalem Talmud, tractate Shabbat 9a. And here's what the Talmud says: resurrection of the dead brings us to Elijah. As it is stated, lo, I will send you the Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of God, that he may turn the heart of fathers back through their children, and the heart of children back through their fathers. So this would then apparently be a reference to the resurrection of the dead, a connection between Elijah the prophet, according to the Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud, that the role of Elijah is actually to bring back the dead. Before Mashiach comes, after Mashiach comes, is not quite clear, as we'll see in a few short moments. Another interesting role of Mashiach, a third of 5 interesting roles of Mashiach, of Eliyahu, in addition to his being a harbinger of the redemption, is that we need him to come before Mashiach simply to anoint Mashiach. Does anybody know what Mashiach actually means? What does the word Mashiach actually mean? Does anybody know? If you can post your answer, Mashiach means anointed one. Now, in biblical times, kings were anointed by whom? They were anointed by prophets. Saul, the first king of Israel, and David, the second king of Israel, were anointed by Samuel, the prophet. All the kings of Israel were anointed by prophets. Thank you, Corey. I see that you got it right on Facebook. The role of the prophets was to anoint the kings, and therefore, how do we have Mashiach, the anointed one, without his being anointed? That's why we need Elijah the prophet to anoint him and to declare him as king. A fourth of 5 other roles of Eliyahu is to be a finder of lost artifacts. This one is from the Mechilta, from the Medrash, which says that, when Mashiach comes after 3,000 years plus of exile, we've lost some stuff over the years, when you send your kids to overnight camp after a month, you buy all their new stuff, their pants and shoes and whatever. They come back with like an empty suitcase, and you're like, what happened? And they're like, I don't know. Turns out they were wearing the same shirt and pants every single day of camp, and you're wondering why you went out and bought 10 pairs of everything. Right? So if in 1 month of camp they lose everything, you can imagine what happens in 3,500 years of exile. That we kind of lost some stuff along the way. We lost our menorah, we lost our Ark of the Covenant, we lost the jar of the manna, we lost the staff of Aaron, all this interesting stuff that was in the Holy Temple. The role of Eliyahu will be to go out and find them. Now, where is the Holy Ark of the Covenant today? Where are the 10 Commandments? Does anybody know where they are today? Do you have any idea where those 10 Commandments might be today? Not so simple. By the way, welcome to everybody who's joining us on YouTube as well. I see Hannah and Andy are there. Robin, Miriam, Ed, Corey, Sophie's with us, Shemaya Futafas, and Bob Bordheimer. Great to see everybody. So where are the Holy Ark of the Covenant? Where is the menorah? Where is all this golden stuff that was built by Moses?
Isn't it under the Dome of the Rock?
Well, the Dome of the Rock is where the rock is, right? Which is where apparently the location of the where the Ark of the Covenant was situated, on the rock of foundation of the universe. Now, Solomon, when he built the temple, he saw by divine prophecy that the temple was going to be ultimately destroyed. So he built labyrinths and tunnels that was so intricate and perfect that nobody would ever be able to find them. And it was in those tunnels that they hid the the holy items of the temple when the temple was was about to be ransacked by the Babylonians the first time round, 2,800 years ago. But I don't know if you heard this week that there was a story in the Temple Mount. They suddenly a hole. Something caved in on the Temple Mount, like a hole, right? And the Israelis are fascinated because they want to dig, they want to research over there. What does the Waqf want to do? Anybody know who the Waqf is? The Waqf is WAQF is like the Muslim council in charge of the Temple Mount. Their unofficial role is to destroy every last vestige of Jewish identity on the Temple Mount so that they can tell the whole world that the Temple Mount is a Muslim holy site and Judaism never existed. Their role is to be revisionists of history, right? And to feed the United Nations what they want to hear. So obviously what the Waqf wants to do is to pump concrete into that hole so that they destroy anything that's ever possibly in there, right? So that's a big fight going on right now about whether they can dig in there or not. On the other hand, you got Jews that don't want to dig in there because you're not allowed to dig in there. It's so holy, you're not allowed to get in there. Jews not allowed to go in there. So it's very complicated to say the least, right? But where did they go and put those holy items of the temple? So Corey says Ethiopia, and you're right, Corey, according to one interpretation. My Google research led me to a temple in Ethiopia. How on earth would Solomon's tunnels ever led to Ethiopia? Well, when you think about the fact that Solomon's one of his wives was the Queen of Sheba. Queen of Sheba was from Ethiopia. It would kind of make sense that Solomon might have built a tunnel all the way through to Ethiopia somehow, and that they would have, remember, he was the wisest of all men, right? So maybe he built a tunnel to Ethiopia. Now, when I did a Google search, there's apparently a temple in Ethiopia called the Temple of the Law. I went to it on Google Earth. And it's this ancient temple. Like nobody ever goes there. There's a guy whose job it is, his entire life is to watch this building without ever entering it. And when he dies, they appoint someone else that his entire life is to watch this temple of the law, right? And the tradition is that holds the temple, the law of Moses, the Ten Commandments. Nobody really knows. Nobody ever goes in there. That's the origin of Indiana Jones, maybe. But the point here is that could it be, according to another interpretation, that the Romans actually ransacked the temple? And you remember the Arch of Titus when they carried, the menorah and stuff? Could it be that it's in the Vatican? Who knows? We'll leave that to Elijah. That's the role of Elijah, and that's why we need Elijah, to be able to find all of our lost stuff. That's why. Okay. Now, number 5, another fifth and final other role of Elijah is something which we discussed last week. It is solving the unsolvable questions in the Torah. Those unsolvable questions in the Torah were, whenever we had a problem in the Torah, 317 times in the Talmud. The Talmud says, Teiku, T-E-I-K-U, Teiku, which is Taf Yud Kuf Vav. Teiku means, in Hebrew, it means like stalemate. But really, it's an acronym for Tishbi, the Tishbite, Elijah, who comes from Tishbi. The Tishbi Yetare Tkushiyes Ve'abayes. Elijah will resolve questions and unresolved doubts. So basically, his role is going to be some sort of great Torah interpreter that he will be able to solve all of the questions unresolved of Torah. Why is it that he will be able to do so? Well, one reason is, let's take a look at this on the screen a second. Hang on, let me just show it to you on the screen. Here it is. And this is from one of the Middle Age commentaries of the Middle Ages. Rabbi Yosef Lippmann Heller died in 1654. He says, Elijah will end all disagreements. This is the basis of the popular notion that the word teku, which means stalemate in modern Hebrew, mentioned in the Talmud is an acronym for Tishbi, Yetaretz, Kushiyas, V'abayis. The Tishbite will resolve all questions and inquiries. The simple interpretation reads it as a portmanteau. I think that means acronym. Maybe that's a word from the Middle Ages. No, Elaine is telling me it's not. What does the word mean? A portmanteau of the words. Oh no, it's like a fusion of two words, right? A fusion of two words. So the simple interpretation reads it as a portmanteau of the words kai tehe. Status quo. So the portmanteau would mean leave it as status quo, but the acronym of the word means that Elijah, the Tishbite, will resolve all questions and answers. Now, and inquiries. Why exactly should Elijah have the answers if nobody else had these answers? If the sages of the Talmud couldn't answer the question, do you have any idea why Elijah should be able to answer the question? Anybody? 317 times in the Talmud we say this. We're going to leave it to Elijah. We're going to leave it stored away. So there's two kinds of answers here. First of all, there's questions like when you have a Talmudic dispute. Is it kosher or is it not kosher? This guy gives a really good argument and that guy gives a really good argument, and we're not quite sure. It's sort of hanging in the balance. If there wasn't a majority rule to decide, then they kind of left it at stalemate. They were like, look, we don't know, we're going to leave it, right? Certain things, by the way, that we do today is because we simply don't know. For example, do you know that grasshoppers are kosher? Did you know that? Grasshoppers and locusts are kosher. Only a certain kind of grasshopper and locust. We just don't know which one, right? So it's been forgotten, the tradition of which grasshoppers. I mean, this doesn't keep me up at night personally. I'm okay not eating the grasshoppers. But if you're a grasshopper lover, then maybe it would keep you up at night, and maybe you'd be anxious for Elijah to come and resolve for us the forgotten law of the kosher grasshopper. Some say it's the ones whose knees are higher than their bodies versus the ones whose knees are lower than their bodies. I don't know. Knock yourself out working it out. We'll leave this one to Elijah. There's also, so I said unresolved disputes, but then there's also laws that we don't know because of modern technology. There's certain things that just haven't come up in the Talmud, and we don't know how to apply them to the ancient Talmud, modern day realities whose application we simply don't know how to do today. And all that kind of stuff we leave to Elijah to work it out. In the Zohar tells us like this. Take a look. The Zohar says that Elijah will be Moses' mouthpiece. Namely, at that time, he will come and resolve all unsolved questions. He's some sort of a sidekick of Moses. He's like his prize student. Now, why would Elijah be Moses' prize student? You may remember from last week, we said that Elijah is Pinchas, which means Elijah lived a very, 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 very long time. That's what we spoke about last week. And when you live that long and you're studying Torah all that time, you've got a clear advantage over everybody else, right? So that would be one reason why Elijah would be the one who has all the answers to all the questions, simply because he's been around long enough, longer than anybody else, and he already knows the answers, right? Long enough to cause great Torah mastery. In conclusion, we've learned today so far that the other roles of Elijah, we said 5 of them, were either to resolve. That's right. Corey says he was Moses' great nephew, which is another reason why he might have been a prize student. Pinchas was the great nephew, correct. So we said 5 different other roles of Elijah besides for being harbinger, announcing the redemption. Number 1, we said that he'll clarify the heritage, the pedigree of the Jewish people. According to Maimonides, he said not exactly. It's a debate. He's only going to bring peace to the world. A third explanation of his role is to resurrect the dead. By the way, why should Elijah be able to resurrect the dead? You have any idea why he should be able to resurrect the dead? If you remember what we learned in the prophets on Monday mornings, remember Elijah was that guy that actually did resurrect the dead. Do you remember that story? You may remember that Elijah had the key of rain. He had the key of rain because there was a long story over there. God said, whatever comes out of your mouth, I will fulfill. And then God wanted to get the key of rain back because it hadn't rained in 3 years. So in order to get the key of rain back, God made Elijah request the key of resurrection, right? He made him request the key of resurrection because of that whole story. Somebody that he knew died and he needed to bring the guy back to life. So God said, I'll only give the key of resurrection if you give me back the key of rain, because there's only 3 keys: rain, resurrection, and what was the third one? And livelihood. Rain is livelihood. Resurrection, and the third key maybe was health. I think it was health maybe. And God said, listen, if a mortal has 2 out of 3 keys and I, God, only have 1 out of 3 keys, it's really not good for my image. It's not good for my business, So God says, I always need to hold 2 out of 3 keys. If you want 1 key, I'll give you 1. The key to rain. But if you want the key to resurrection, also you can't have 2 out of 3. Give me back the key to rain. And that's when God gave Elijah the key to resurrection. So for a little while, Elijah had the key to resurrection, something that nobody else ever had. Maybe Elisha, his student, because of how Elisha was double Elijah. But basically, since Elijah has the key of resurrection, it kind of makes sense that he be the one to bring about the resurrection when Mashiach comes. The fourth thing that we learned, we said the third thing was that his role was as a prophet was to anoint Mashiach, like anointing the kings. The fourth thing we said was to find the lost objects of thousands of years. And the fifth thing we said was to resolve unresolved doubts. But now where we go from here, friends, is, by the way, Elijah never died, Corey said. That's true. He went up to heaven in a chariot of fire. So he really gets the whole concept of not dying. He really defied mortality. in the way that he went up to heaven in the chariots of fire. Again, I'm not going to get into that story because we've learned about it on Monday mornings. And if you want to hear that class, you can always go to youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, where you can see the biblical history series, youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, where you can find the biblical history series about the story of Elijah and how he died or didn't die, how he went up to heaven in the chariots of fire. We'll be talking a little bit more about that momentarily. But where we're going now is, in the next section, is exploring two more ideas about Elijah. Number one is when exactly will he come? And number two, why do we need him? So the first thing is, when it comes to when will he come? There's a lot of different opinions. It's pretty complicated. Let's take a look at it on the screen to see when will Elijah come, right? This quote comes from Maimonides. The simple interpretation of the prophet's words appears to imply that the war of Gog and Magog will take place at the beginning of the Messianic age, after the Mashiach's arrival. We've learned about the war of Gog and Magog. Before the war of Gog and Magog, a prophet will arise to inspire Israel to be upright and prepare their hearts, as scripture states, behold, I am sending you Elijah. So these sages, according to these sages, Elijah will come before the war of Gog and Magog, which is before the arrival of Mashiach, effectively, because the Gog and Magog is at the beginning of Mashiach. By contrast, there are some sages who say that Elijah's coming will precede Mashiach's arrival. All these and similar matters cannot be definitely known by man until they occur. For these matters are undefined in the prophet's words, and even the wise men have no established tradition regarding these matters except their own interpretation of the verses. Therefore, there is a controversy amongst them regarding these matters. Regardless of the debate concerning these questions, Maimonides lays down the rules right here. Neither the order of the occurrence of these events nor their precise detail are among the fundamental principles of the faith. The answer is it doesn't really matter. That's the answer, exactly when he comes. A person should not occupy himself with the Agadot and homiletics concerning these and similar matters, nor should he consider them as essentials, for study of them will bring neither love nor fear of God. So Maimonides says it doesn't really matter. Who cares? If Elijah comes a little earlier, a little later, what's the difference? You have to do Torah and mitzvahs. You've got to bring Mashiach. That's what matters. That's what you need to be focusing on right now, right? It's interesting that the Rabbi says that Elijah will actually come twice. Once before the coming of Mashiach to announce his arrival, and another time after Mashiach comes to assist with the war effort of Gog and Magog. And the Rebbe explains that the whole debate here is only about whether, the Rebbe says everybody agrees Elijah is going to come before Mashiach and after Mashiach. And the whole debate is which is his primary role. If his primary role is to announce the Mashiach's arrival, then those are the ones that say that Elijah will come before Mashiach. But if his primary role is to fight the war of Gog and Magog or something else, then they say that he will come after the arrival of Mashiach. But either way, it doesn't really matter. When we get into the why, the final section of our discussion today, though, when we get into the why Mashiach comes, we'll start to understand, put into better context, the importance of his arrival. So first, before I proceed, I just want to ask if anybody has any questions here, as just before we go ahead. How are we doing so far, everybody? Are you managing over there? Nothing too outrageous, nothing too crazy yet, right? Still good? Okay. On Facebook, if you have any questions, please let me know. And now we're going to go into the final section of our discussion here today, which is the why. Why do we need the arrival of Elijah? Do we really need Elijah to do all these tasks? Like, why can't Mashiach do them himself? Is Mashiach like too busy to to do all these tasks on his own, that he needs like assistance? He needs an executive assistant. He's too busy. I mean, seriously, if you're going to come and redeem the whole world, if you're going to resurrect the dead and you're going to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, I mean, you're going to be making peace in the Middle East. This guy is going to be the Nobel Prize winner. This Mashiach character is going to be unbelievable. So what? He needs helpers. Like what? He couldn't resolve the Torah questions while he's at it. He can't let us know where the lost objects are. We actually need Elijah for this. Let's understand. So now we're going to give a total of, let me see, five answers for why we need Mashiach. Sorry, why we need Elijah. I'm sorry. 5 answers as to why we need Elijah. Number 1. First answer is, you may remember a few weeks ago we learned that if the Jews are worthy, then Mashiach will come sooner. And if the Jews are not worthy, Mashiach will come late. It will come on time. That's what the prophet Isaiah says, Be'ita achishena, in its time I will hasten it, which is a paradox. Is it in its time or is it I will hasten it? Right? Can't be both. It can't be in its time and it can't be hastened at the same time. You know, there's a joke out there about Lubavitchers, Chabadniks, they're always late. Chabadniks, it's like a joke, they're always late. And the Yekes, the German Jews, are always on time. Like exactly, a Yeke is a guy that knows when his light bulb in the kitchen is going to expire, so he's already changing it a week before it expires. That's a Yeke Jew. Chabadniks are like a little known for being a little late. Yekes are known for being exactly meticulous on time. The Germans, you know, it's like the Mercedes-Benz and the BMW and the timepieces. They're just, this is their thing. So what happens when you have a wedding between a Chabadnik and a Yeke? What time is the wedding? Like, how do you know when to come to this wedding? If it's a Chabad, you know, when I got married, I was like, I think I showed up to my one of the first events after my wedding. You know, the Khanis family is notoriously, you know, they're not exactly punctual. So I showed up and I was like the first guy there. It was like my wedding party or something. I was like, there's nobody there. It was amazing. So I'm more slightly more of a Yekka in that regard. So what time do you do a wedding between a Yekka and a Chabadnik? So the answer they resolved is that it's exactly half an hour late. And that way everybody's happy, right? So how is it that Isaiah says that Mashiach is going to come in its time? I will hasten it. It's like a contradiction in terms. It can't be both. Can't be in its time and hasten. So we said, if they're worthy, the Jewish people, he comes early, hastened. If they're not worthy, he'll come in its time. And we also explained that the entire role of Elijah is only necessary if Mashiach comes in his time. But if we are worthy and Mashiach is hastened, we don't need Elijah at all. And the answer, the first of our 5 answers as to why we need Elijah, the first of the 5 answers is we don't. We don't need him at all. If we are worthy, then indeed everything's going to happen in a miraculous way and not in a natural unfolding of events. And since it's going to be miraculous, yeah, whatever. I mean, the same way the Mashiach will do miraculous stuff. He'll like plonk down the temple on the Temple Mount and just, well, I don't know what he's going to do with the Golden Dome. I have no idea. But if that's going to be a miracle, then he can do everything else miraculously. He doesn't need Elijah. But if it's going to be in its time, because we're not worthy, it's going to be a natural process. And maybe we'll make peace with the United Arab Emirates, and maybe with Saudi Arabia, and maybe we'll even make peace with Iran, and maybe we'll even make peace with the Palestinians. And maybe they'll kind of make a deal that we can build our temple there. And that's going to be a natural process. And then we'll need Elijah to do all the other stuff. Right? So that's the first answer, is that if we don't actually need Elijah, if it's going to be a process which is miraculous because we are worthy. But the second answer as to why we need Elijah puts things into beautiful context. It helps us understand. By understanding who Elijah is, we can understand the essence of the redemption and his intrinsic connection to the redemption. You know, I often tell you that on Monday mornings when we learn the prophets, some people tell me, I don't like the stories of the prophets. And I say to them, you know, to be able to understand Torah in general, as we are learning through Torah, you really need to be familiar with the stories of Torah. Because they're referenced in half a sentence and they shed light on profound ideas in other places of Torah. For example, this morning I was studying something and it was a very profound, deep concept early this morning. And in half a sentence it said, it referenced Elijah literally in half a word. And I'm very familiar with the story, so I was able to understand the entire context of the metaphor because I'm very familiar with the story, right? So when you understand the stories of Torah, of the prophets, you're able to understand many other areas of Judaism and Jewish philosophy as well. So it's important to, like I say, fill in the holes of our Jewish knowledge, of our general Jewish knowledge, by understanding who all the Jewish characters of Jewish history were and their stories, to be able to understand the wisdom that the Torah is sharing with us by sharing those stories. And you'll find out that wisdom later in other places. So here we are, and we've learned a lot about Elijah. I'm going to tell you something about Elijah that you didn't know. And I'm going to contrast Elijah with Moses. Elijah's mother was pregnant with him for 12 months. Moses' mother was pregnant with him for how long? Anybody know? 6 months. Moses was premature. We know that. You know, the Egyptians, they had an appointment to come visit the home of Moses to throw him into the River Nile. For 3 months, she was able to hide him in the house because the Egyptians had a date for 9 months since Moses' parents remarried. But he was born at 6 months, and therefore he was able to live 3 months at home before they set him on the River Nile. So Moses was born at 6 months. Elijah was born at 12 months. This is crazy. They would never let you do that today. They'd always do what do they call it? An inducing. What's the significance of this premature or very late birth? When Moses was born, it says that the house was filled with light. Because Moses' soul, his godly soul, just outshone the physical components of his body. Moses was all spirit. He was like very little body. He was ethereal. He was like a spirit. That was Moses. He was just like just a little bit tethered in a body. But Elijah was the polar opposite of that. Elijah was a body that dominated a soul. That's why his mother was pregnant with his body for so long. He was a body that dominated his soul. He was actually very corporeal. He was very physical, very mundane. And actually, that's why the numerical value of the word Elijah, Eliyahu, is the same as Behema, which means a beast. Eliyahu and Behema, which is a beast, physical, is the same numerical value. Because Elijah was a very physical being. What was unique about Elijah is that this, notwithstanding his disadvantage, the fact that he was so physical, where his body dominated over the light of his soul, he worked on himself so much that he allowed his body, like through Tanya, he allowed his body to work in tandem with his soul, refining and purifying and sublimating and sanctifying his body to the point that Elijah became so incredibly sublimated that he died in a way that nobody ever else left this world. He left this world, as we learned, in a chariot of fire. He literally got onto the chariot of fire and he went straight up to heaven. His physical body evaporated, basically. His physicality became spiritual. And that's the extraordinary identity of Elijah, which is the purification of his physical body. And that actually is the essence of what Moshiach is all about. The role of Mashiach, we've learned this a few weeks ago. The word exile in Hebrew is gola, gimel vav lamed hey, gola, and redemption is geula. It's the same word, just with an aleph. The same word with an aleph inside. Geula and gola. G-O-L-A is exile, or G-E-O-L-A is geula, is redemption. The only difference between exile and redemption is the presence of the aleph. Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet, represents the one God, the master of the universe. The era of Mashiach is about redemption because it's about us infusing an awareness of our Creator into the world that we inhabit. When we can infuse a higher consciousness, a presence, an awareness of God's divine presence into every single aspect of our lives, we have sanctified this physical world and are ready for redemption. When we have put the aleph into every physical object of this world, you took a glass of water and you made a blessing on it, you've put an aleph into it, you put the presence of God into it. When you study Torah on your laptop or your iPhone right now, it means that you're putting God's awareness into your phone, into your dining room or living room, or onto your Facebook feed. And if you share this video, now you're really being very, very holy and very special. So please share the video. And subscribe to us on facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. That's facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. When we understand that Elijah was probably the most extraordinary character in all of Jewish history, in the sense that he was born the most physical at 12 months, and he died the most spiritual by not actually dying. He literally took his body to heaven. We now realize that he is the paradigm of refining this physical world, of infusing divine consciousness into every aspect of this physical world. This physical world, which seems to betray any shred of the presence of its creator. A Jew infuses awareness of the creator by all the mitzvahs and Torah that we do. And we learned this in Tanya this week in chapter 36 and 37. We're learning that is the purpose of a mitzvah. The purpose of a mitzvah is conquest, is about infusing the awareness of God into every single thing of this world. And it's a culmination of all of our mitzvahs that will result in the divine consciousness in this world, the lifting of the veil that hides God's presence in this world. And that is exemplified by Elijah. And that's the reason why Elijah is the critical harbinger of the redemption. Not because we need someone to make an announcement so that when CNN wants to know what's going on, they'll say, and here we have Elijah the prophet from, how old are you exactly? Right. It's not that we need someone to interview on CNN. It's just that he is the manifestation of the culmination of our efforts. Let's take a look at this idea in the words of the Rabbi. Why we need Elijah. Here he is. In the words of the Rabbi in 1962. Elijah's unique association with heralding the redemption can be understood by way of explaining the difference between him and Moses. When Moses was born, the house was filled with light. But at the end of the day, that light didn't penetrate his material body. And thus his body was ultimately buried. So Moses was like a soul who happened to have a body. But he didn't really impact the body too much. Elijah, by contrast, was of different cloth. He transformed his material body so much so that he ascended alive to the heavens. This then is his connection to the redemption. For the redemption is all about all flesh together shall see that the mouth of God spoke. This prophecy of Isaiah is the essence of the redemption. It's a divine awareness. This then is his connection to the redemption. For the redemption is all about us being able to see that the mouth of God has spoke, namely, that the material flesh will be transformed so much that it will actually see godliness. That's the role of Elijah. To be a manifestation or maybe an inspiration to us to be able to prepare for the coming of Mashiach. Okay? We're going to look at, I hope that made sense to you. If it didn't, or if you agree or disagree, please let me know. That was pretty deep over there, that explanation. But I think it's aligned with everything that we've been learning in Tanya. That, our role is not to have the godly soul fight against our natural soul, but for our godly soul to work in tandem with our natural soul and our physical body, to sanctify and sublimate it to the point that the horse is serving the rider, the ox is serving the farmer. Instead of the ox fighting against the farmer, the ox is serving the farmer. And that is a Beinani of Tanya. That is the mastery for which we're looking to achieve in Tanya. As a Jew, our role, it's actually this week's Torah portion, which the entire Tanya is based on. For the thing is very near to you in your mouth and in your heart that you may do it. It's easy to be a perfect Jew. That comes from this week's Torah portion. And it is there, this verse that the Tanya is based on, which is telling us how to be a perfect Jew. The way to be a perfect Jew is to sublimate, sanctify the physical body, your natural soul, this physical world. Our goal is not to run away from the physicality of this world, but to embrace it and sanctify. That's why Jews drink a lot of wine. They drink a lot of alcohol. Not too much, but they drink a lot. That's why Jews invest in real estate and they make a lot of money and they give a lot of charity. Because our goal is spirituality is not a rejection of the physical. That's a misinterpretation of religion. To think that spirituality is the antithesis of physicality is a misinterpretation of God's wishes. Judaism doesn't want us to die for God. Judaism doesn't want us to remain celibate. Judaism doesn't want us to deny ourselves the pleasures and luxury of this world. You're supposed to engage with them. You're supposed to enjoy your life, friends, but do it in a holy way. Don't do it for a selfish way. Do it for a holy way. Have that amazing cup of coffee in the morning, not because you need selfish coffee, but because you want to serve God, be able to focus on your prayer and on your learning, and to have the strength to feed your family and do all the mitzvahs that you need to do. When you indulge in the luxuries of this world for a holy reason, now you've sublimated this world. Now you're being like Elijah. Now you're ready for Mashiach. So if there's no comments or questions, I'm gonna proceed with 3 more explanations, a little less abstract, but 3 more explanations as to why we need Elijah. So another one is, every time you reach a quantum leap, you need someone to guide you through it, to hold your hand. When we received the Torah on Mount Sinai, we couldn't do it without a Moses. When God drops the 10 commandments upon us and he's like, oh, by the way, there's 613 of these laws. That kind of changed everything, So we needed a Moses to really walk us through that. When you're experiencing a quantum leap, when the Alter Rebbe introduced when the Baal Shem Tov really introduced Hasidus to this world, there was a lot of disagreement amongst the disciples of the Baal Shem Tov, whether the secrets of Kabbalah, of godly awareness, should be kept within the closely guarded circles of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, or they should be disseminated outwards. The Alter Rebbe, who was one of those students, felt that it was important to spread it outwards, and he started a revolution of bringing the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov everywhere. Ultimately, the Alter Rebbe was thrown into jail. If you remember, we learned about this for 53 days, corresponding to the 53 chapters of Tanya that he wrote, because in heaven they were trying to block him. He was bringing a quantum leap of godly awareness to this world by teaching Chabad philosophy, the Tanya, and the derivative Chabad teachings of the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe was introducing us to a whole new level, a porthole of a whole new dimension of godly awareness. And for that, you need a guide, you need a teacher, you need a shepherd. So just like the Alter Rebbe, when the Baal Shem Tov introduced to us generally Hasidus, and the Alter Rebbe introduced to us the Hasidus of Chabad, so too when Mashiach will introduce to us the vision of God, the ability to see God, we're really going to need a guide, a shepherd. And that's what the role of Elijah is. Let's take a look at how the Rebbe explains this idea. There are a number of steps here on the screen. There are a number of steps that we find as preparatory steps for Moshiach. In Maimonides' words, Elijah's role will be to align the people and prepare their hearts for the Messianic era. It certainly must be so regarding the primary matter of the Messianic era, namely what Maimonides describes as the sages yearned for that Messianic era only, so that they be free to engage in Torah wisdom. Since the main role of Mashiach is to bring godly awareness to this world, the opportunity to engage in understanding the knowledge of their Creator, it is necessary to align the Jewish people and prepare their hearts for that. And that's why we need someone who's a shepherd and a guide to guide us in that journey. And that's the role of Elijah. Again, not just announcing the redemption on CNN, but he's actually the rabbi, the Rebbe, who's going to prepare us to be able to be ready for the coming of Mashiach. Another reason why we need Elijah is, remember Moses had a sidekick? Moses had a sidekick. His sidekick was Aaron. Moses was the man of truth, of emes. And Aaron was the man of kindness. When Aaron died, it says the men and the women all cried for him. All the people of Israel cried for him. When Moses died, it says only the men cried for him. Why? Because Moses was a teacher of truth, of wisdom. And Aaron was a peacemaker between man and woman. So Moses was loyal to his line of truth, but he needed someone else to be the man of kindness. They're different roles. And in the same way that Moses needed a sidekick, so too Elijah also will serve as a sidekick to Mashiach. Let's take a look at this from the Medrash, this idea, this fourth reason why we need Elijah. The original redemption from Egypt was effected by 2 redeemers. As the verse states, he sent Moses as servant and Aaron whom he chose. So will be in this generation. 2 redeemers will be sent. Indeed, the verse states, I will send Elijah the prophet to you. That's one. The second, behold my servant, I will support him. It is for this reason that the verse states, send your light and your truth. Light and truth represents 2 different redeemers. One is Elijah and one is Mashiach. So they serve two different roles in that sense, where Mashiach might be the man of truth or light, and Elijah would be the man of truth or light, whichever one it is. So there's different energies here, right? Like, for example, when you treat your kids when you have kids, right? So sometimes when your kids are misbehaving, you want to make sure that you and your spouse are tag teaming on the kid, because one spouse should take a position of criticizing so that the kid knows that it's wrong, but the other spouse should take a position of comforting so that the kid knows that he's still loved. Right? And it's very difficult for one person to take both those roles. You can't be both criticizing and comforting. If one parent is the criticizing one, then the kid will genuinely know they did something wrong. And if the other parent is the one who's comforting, then the kid will genuinely know that he's loved. And that's how eventually the kid will ultimately come back home. And I'm talking about a grown kid, when you have 20, 30, 40-year-old kids, and they made something really bad decision, then you might need to tag team on that kind of a way. Right? And that's why Moses and Aaron needed to tag team as well, and Elijah as well, together with Mashiach. Finally, the most interesting answer I want to share with you here today is that Elijah, his role, remember Elijah's like this prophet. He's this guy that shows up at our seders. We never actually see him. Elijah is not actually a person, according to this final explanation. Elijah is the power of our own inspiration. Whenever we become inspired to do the right thing, to do mitzvahs, to learn Torah, to prepare for Mashiach, to shake off the dust of our past and brace ourselves for the greatness of our future, that is the power of Elijah within us, which is inside of you, even though you don't sense Elijah within you. So Elijah is an energy and not necessarily an entity. In this final explanation, Elijah is what you and I are doing right now. We're learning about Mashiach. If you showed up on Facebook or on Zoom here today, or if you're listening with me live or later, then Elijah is what's motivating you to stay this long on this class. We're almost done, by the way. It's because we genuinely are thirsty for knowledge. It's the desire to know about Mashiach and to understand what we're going to and to prepare ourselves for this great day. That is the power of our own inspiration. It's the Elijah within ourselves. Let's take a look at this idea in the words of Reb Menachem Nachum Tursky, the Rebbe of Chernobyl. The verse states, "Lo, I will send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming." The word chalush, the word eshlach, that's like a mistake on the screen. The word eshlach, I will send, as opposed to, the word is sholeach. So I see it's backwards on here on the screen. The word is sholeach, I will send, as opposed to there's a mistake here on the screen. The word is sholeach, I am sending, as opposed to eshlach, I will send. It says I am sending in the present tense, as opposed to I will send. It's actually written in the present tense, which implies that it's already happening. Now, the truth is that all inspiration any Jew has toward their Father in heaven is the element of Elijah announcing all matters of perfection, like Torah and prayer. Prior to perfection, there must be much yearning and desire, and that comes through Elijah, who inspires this great drive. Only after that does the element of Mashiach arrive. As the Baal Shem Tov stated, every Jew ought to prepare and polish the portion of Mashiach that is directly related to their soul. Mashiach's actual soul is the culmination of the individual souls of all 600,000 Jews. We learned that in Tanya just this week. We learned that every single Jew fulfilling every mitzvah, positive, passive, and active, is what will ultimately sanctify every aspect of the world, because every Jew has a portion of this world which is related to his own soul. And when you sanctify your own divine service, you've sanctified your portion in this world. For this reason, every Jew must work with a portion of Mashiach that is relevant to their soul until the entire collective body is unified constantly. May it be soon in our days. Such unity is impossible without a great amount of prior inspiration. So it's not possible for us to be perfect in our fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs, 248 positive mitzvahs, 365 passive mitzvahs, without great inspiration. It's only when we learn Tanya 37 and we understand how each and every one of us has a portion in this world that only you and I can elevate. Only you can elevate your portion in this world and nobody else. It's only when you understand the importance of your actions and how the entire history of the world is waiting for you specifically to do your mitzvah and to refrain from your sins in order for Mashiach to come. It's only then that it dawns upon us how important our role is and how much we matter. Such unity is impossible with a great amount of prior inspiration. This inspiration is called an announcement, and it is Elijah's role. Thus, prior to the perfection of Mashiach, Elijah's announcement will come to inspire the Jews' great yearning and desire. I would posit that perhaps the Tanya is Elijah. Maybe the Tanya is Elijah. You know, many of you have studied Tanya with me. Just yesterday, I got a beautiful email from a girl in the Midwest, a young woman in the Midwest who's coming from a very unique background. And she has been learning Tanya with me apparently online. I didn't know. And she's been inspired and she's, reinventing herself. It's a beautiful thing. So I know many of you that are listening with me right now have reinvented yourselves on different levels by learning Tanya. Perhaps could the Tanya be our Elijah? Could that be what's inspired us to reinvent ourselves and to infuse more passion and drive in our divine service and our preparation for Mashiach? I think so. Why not? In closing, friends, I want to conclude by saying we've learned now several answers as to why we need Mashiach. One role we said is that we might not need Mashiach because if we are worthy, we won't need him at all. A second answer of 5 we said is that he personifies the redemption because he transformed his own physical matter of his body into holiness, and that's what Mashiach is all about. The third answer we said was that his role is to prepare the Jewish people for the quantum leap into the new Torah that Mashiach will reveal to us. A fourth role is that he will serve as the sidekick of Mashiach, just like Aaron served as the sidekick of Moses. And the fifth role was that the reason why we need Elijah is because we need him to inspire the people to actually bring Mashiach. This is already happening now, as all the inspiration of every Jew is essentially Elijah's calling. In closing, we realize that Elijah is not a person, but a process. It's a collective calling. It's a state of consciousness. Elijah's already here, friends. If you're feeling a shred of inspiration right now, or in general, then you've already been touched by Elijah. You've already heard his message. And we don't need anybody else at any moment in time right now. Mashiach is ready to arrive, to show up and bring this world to a state of peace, prosperity, and purpose with the revelation of divine consciousness, the presence of Hashem all around us. So that's a wrap for today's class with the reason that we need Mashiach, that we need Eliyahu to come before Mashiach. If anybody has any questions or comments, please speak up or forever hold your peace. If you have any questions, comments, closing criticisms, thoughts, comments on Facebook, we'd love to hear from you. While you're thinking, I just want to let you know that next week, same time, Thursday morning, we'll be starting a 4-part series called the DIY course, Do-It-Yourself course on the high holidays. The first one will be DIY Rosh Hashanah, how to do Rosh Hashanah on your own at home. The second one will be DIY Yom Kippur, 2 weeks from now, how to do Yom Kippur at home. Then Sukkot at home, and then Simchas Torah at home. 4-part series right here at the spot on Zoom and Facebook for those that feel that they need to stay home during the high holidays. You may have noticed we have 6 different options for you to choose from on the high holidays, including the DIY class starting next Thursday morning. We have indoor services. We have outdoor services. Indoor services are traditional. Outdoor services are abbreviated. We have only shofar times to only hear the shofar. If you want to just literally hear the shofar and leave. We have a Zoom concert next Wednesday night for Rosh Hashanah with a famous cantor and speaker and sand art performer. Also, the following Wednesday night will happen before Yom Kippur. We have 6 options. One of them is going to be an option to pick up your Rosh Hashanah box next Thursday. There's a special Rosh Hashanah box. There's special prayer books for you to take home, abbreviated prayer books for you to take home, explanatory prayer books. And the final thing is, what else do we want to tell you? I can't remember what the 6th option. Oh, we have private sanctuary visits. If you want to come into the sanctuary before the high holidays, and spend some time alone in the ark, at the ark, open the ark. You can do that on your own. Just call the office and you can spend that time alone. I see Terry's asking a question. Thank you, Bob Wertheimer. I'm glad you enjoyed the class. Terry says, can you clarify what you said toward the beginning when you said that we might make peace with other countries before Mashiach? Did you say then that we wouldn't need Elijah? Yes, that's exactly what I said, Terry. I said that if we are worthy, then Mashiach will come in a miraculous manner, where peace will come to the Middle East miraculously. And yeah, the temple will descend from heaven like a miraculous construction that will miraculously bring peace to the Middle East. That's quite a miracle, as you can just imagine. But if we are not worthy and Mashiach comes in his time, then it will be a natural process. And instead of a temple descending miraculously on the Temple Mount, on the Golden Dome, what's going to happen is it'll be a slow, gradual process, a natural political process, where peace might be made with the Emirates, and then with Bosnia and Sarajevo, whatever that country's called, Slovakia, I don't remember what it was called, and then maybe with Sudan, maybe Malaysia, maybe India, Pakistan, who knows which other countries will join in, and eventually Iran, and maybe the Palestinians, and we'll sort it out, and we'll make peace, and then we'll work out how to build the temple, and then Mashiach will come in a slow, gradual process. That's when we will need Elijah. So if there are no questions further or comments, I want to thank everybody for joining me here today. It's been always a pleasure to study with you, everybody. Just remember, Mashiach is coming soon, very soon, today. And it's up to you to do one more mitzvah, to infuse your own mind and heart with the awareness of Hashem's presence in every single aspect of your life. Because when you bring Mashiach to your own reality, to your own consciousness, that's when you bring Mashiach to the whole entire world. Thank you very much, everybody. Been a pleasure. Today's Thursday. Corey's giving a class at 11:30 today in Hebrew reading and Tehillim of Psalms of King David on Zoom. That's jewishgardens.com/Zoom. There will not be a class tonight at 8 o'clock. The Mashiach class has just concluded. And with that, please share this video on your Facebook feed, on Facebook. Please share this video, like the video, share the video. We appreciate what you do in spreading the good word. And subscribe to us also on YouTube, youtube.com/Jewish Gardens by clicking the red subscribe button. Thank you very much, everybody. Mashiach is real. Mashiach is coming. Make sure you don't get forgotten. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Shalom.